The gunshot that cracked through the desert morning sent Vincent Garrett diving behind his water trough, heart hammering as he peered through the dusk to see a figure stumbling toward his ranch, dark hair streaming, arms wrapped around bleeding ribs. It was early spring in 1878, and Vincent's small ranch outside Laredo, Texas, had seen better days. The drought had been brutal. His cattle were scattered across what remained of decent grazing land, and his bank account held barely enough to see him through another month. At 26 years old, he had already lost his father to consumption and his mother to heartbreak 6 months later. The ranch was all he had left of them, and he was determined to keep it running no matter how many 17-hour days it took. But the woman collapsing near his corral fence was not something he had prepared for that morning. Vincent scrambled from behind the trough and ran toward her, his boots kicking up clouds of Texas dust. She was Apache, that much was clear from her clothing, and the way her black hair was tied back with red cloth. Blood seeped through her fingers where she clutched her side. Her face was pale beneath sun-bronzed skin, and her eyes, dark as midnight, fixed on him with a mixture of defiance and desperation. "Easy now," Vincent said, reaching for her as she started to crumple. "I have got you." She tried to pull away, but her strength was failing. He caught her before she hit the ground, and she was lighter than he expected, all lean muscle and sharp angles. Her breathing came in short gasps, and when he carefully moved her hand from her wound, he saw it was not a gunshot but a knife wound, deep and angry. "Who did this to you?" he asked, already knowing she might not understand English. Her eyes met his, and he saw intelligence there and pain, and something else he could not quite name. Her lips parted, but no words came. She simply stared at him, and he realized she was studying him, trying to determine if he meant her harm. "I am going to help you," Vincent said slowly, clearly. "I am taking you inside. I need to stop this bleeding." She did not protest as he lifted her, which told him how badly she was hurt. His house was modest, just 3 rooms with a kitchen, a bedroom, and a small sitting area that he rarely used. He carried her to his own bed, the only one in the house, and laid her down as gently as he could. She watched him with those unreadable eyes as he fetched water, clean cloths, and the bottle of whiskey he kept for emergencies. Her breathing had grown shallower, and sweat beaded on her forehead. Vincent had patched up his share of injuries, both his own and his cattle's, but this was different. This was a knife wound on a woman who clearly had people looking for her, people willing to kill. "This is going to hurt," he said, meeting her gaze, "but I have to clean it." He poured whiskey over the wound, and she bit down hard, her body going rigid, but no sound escaped her lips. Not a cry, not a whimper. Her silence was absolute. Vincent worked quickly, cleaning the wound as best he could, relieved to see it was not as deep as he had feared. The blade had sliced along her ribs rather than between them. It would heal, given time and care. He stitched her up with the same thread he used to mend his shirts, his hands steady despite the oddness of the situation. She watched him the entire time, her face a mask of stoic endurance. When he finished and bandaged her ribs with clean cloth, she finally closed her eyes, exhaustion overtaking her. Vincent sat back, wiping sweat from his own brow. The sun was climbing higher, which meant he had chores waiting. The cattle needed checking, the fence in the north pasture needed mending, and his horse needed shoeing. But he could not leave her alone, not like this. He compromised by working near the house, checking on her every hour. Each time she was either sleeping or lying with her eyes open, staring at the ceiling. She never spoke, she never made a sound. When he brought her water, she drank. When he brought her broth, she ate. But she would not meet his eyes anymore, as if that first moment of connection had been all she could afford. 3 days passed this way. Vincent fell into a routine of caring for her while managing his ranch. He gave her his bed and slept on the floor of the sitting room, his bedroll spread over rough wooden planks. His body ached from the hard surface, but it seemed wrong to make an injured woman sleep anywhere but a proper bed. On the 4th morning, he woke to find her standing in the doorway of the bedroom, one hand braced against the frame. She wore the same clothing she had arrived in, now clean because he had washed the blood out while she slept that first night. Her hair hung loose around her shoulders, and in the early light she looked like something from a dream, both fierce and fragile. "You should not be up," Vincent said, getting to his feet. "Your stitches might tear." She looked at him then, really looked at him, and he felt the weight of her assessment. He was tall, lean from hard work and lean times, with brown hair that needed cutting and green eyes that his mother had always said were too serious for a young man. He had a scar on his left cheek from a horse that had disagreed with being broken, and his hands were calloused from rope and leather and hard labor. Whatever she saw must have satisfied her, because she stepped back into the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed. She pointed at herself, then at the floor, a clear gesture that she wanted to help to work to earn her keep. "No," Vincent said, shaking his head. "You need to heal. There will be time enough for work later if you decide to stay." Her expression shifted slightly, surprise flickering across her features. She had expected him to demand labor in exchange for his help, he realized. She had expected to be used. "I am not that kind of man," Vincent said quietly. "You are hurt. You needed help. That is all there is to it." She studied him again, and then, slowly, she nodded. It was a small gesture, but it felt like progress. Over the following weeks, Vincent learned to read her silent language. She had dozens of ways of communicating without words. A tilt of her head meant she was curious. A narrowing of her eyes meant she disagreed. A particular set to her shoulders meant she was in pain but trying to hide it. He learned that she was strong-willed and proud, that she hated being idle, and that she observed everything with the sharp attention of someone who had survived by being aware. Her name was a mystery. He tried several Apache names he had heard over the years, but none sparked recognition. Finally, he simply called her Sarah, the name of a saint his mother had loved, and she accepted it without protest. He explained his reasoning, telling her about his mother's faith and her kindness, and Sarah's eyes softened in a way that made his chest tighten. Sarah started contributing to the ranch work as soon as she could stand without wincing. She was an extraordinary horsewoman, able to calm his most difficult mare with just a touch and a look. She could track better than any man he had ever met, finding cattle he had thought long lost. She could read the weather in the clouds and the behavior of animals, knowledge that saved them from a flash flood one afternoon when she insisted they move the herd to higher ground. Vincent found himself watching her more than he should. The way she moved, graceful and purposeful. The way she sat her horse as if she had been born in the saddle. The way she looked at sunset, her face turned toward the dying light, something achingly lonely in her expression. He wanted to know her story, where she had come from, who had hurt her, why she never spoke, but he did not push. He sensed that she would share in her own time, or not at all. Summer arrived with its merciless heat. Vincent and Sarah worked side by side, and he came to rely on her in ways he had not relied on anyone since his father's death. She was there when a cow got stuck in the creek bed. She was there when he needed to break a new horse. She was there in the evening when he was too tired to cook, presenting him with rabbit she had snared and roasted over the fire. They developed a comfortable domesticity that both soothed and unsettled him. She mended his clothes. He brought her wildflowers he found on the range, placing them in a jar on the kitchen table without comment. She taught him Apache methods of finding water in dry land. He taught her to read English from his mother's old Bible, pointing at words and saying them aloud while she followed along with her finger. It was during one of these reading lessons, 3 months after she had arrived, that everything changed. They were sitting at the kitchen table, the Bible open between them. The evening was warm and the window was open to catch any breeze. Sarah's finger traced the words of Psalm 23 and Vincent read aloud, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want." She stopped moving her finger. He looked up and found her staring at the page with an intensity that made him nervous. "Sarah," he said softly. She looked at him, and her eyes were full of tears. It was the first time he had seen her cry, the first time he had seen that iron control crack. "Shepherd," she whispered, and the sound of her voice after months of silence was like a bell ringing in an empty church. "My father was shepherd, to our people." Vincent's breath caught. Her voice was low and slightly hoarse from disuse, accented but clear. And suddenly the floodgates opened. "His name was Grey Wolf," she continued, the words coming faster now, as if she had been holding them back for so long they could not be contained anymore. "He was a good man, a wise man, but the soldiers came. They said we had to leave our land. They said we had to go to the reservation in Arizona. But Grey Wolf said no. He said this was our land, our home. We would not leave." She stopped, breathing hard, and Vincent reached across the table to take her hand. She gripped his fingers so tightly it hurt. "They attacked at dawn," she said, "while we slept. They killed Grey Wolf first. Then they killed my mother, my brother, my sister. I ran, I hid in the rocks, and I saw them die. I heard them die, and I could do nothing." "Sarah," Vincent said, his throat tight. "My name is not Sarah," she said, meeting his eyes. "My name is Shania Grey Wolf. Shania. It means I am on my way." "Shania," Vincent repeated, tasting the name. "I am so sorry for what happened to your family." Shania's tears spilled over. "I ran for days. Men followed. Bad men, not soldiers. Worse. They wanted to sell me. I fought. One cut me. I ran again, and then I found you." She pulled her hand from his and wrapped her arms around herself, as if trying to hold the pieces together. "I did not speak because I thought if I spoke, if I remembered, I would die. The pain would kill me, so I stayed silent. I made myself silent, but you were kind. You were so kind. And I started to heal, not just my body, my spirit. And tonight, reading about shepherds, about my father, I realized I wanted to live. I wanted to speak. I wanted to tell you everything." Vincent moved around the table and knelt beside her chair. "I am honored that you trust me with your story," he said. "And I want you to know that you are safe here, for as long as you need, for as long as you want." Shania looked down at him, and something shifted in her expression. Her hand came up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the scar on his cheek. "You have your own pain," she said softly. "I see it in your eyes when you think I am not watching." Vincent swallowed hard. "I lost my parents," he said. "Both of them within 6 months. This ranch was their dream. I am trying to keep it alive, but some days I am not sure I can." "You can," Shania said with absolute certainty. "Because you are strong. Like the oak tree in the storm, you bend but you do not break." Her words settled something in him, some doubt he had been carrying. And suddenly he was aware of how close they were, how her hand was still on his face, how her eyes had darkened with something that was not grief. "Shania," he said, her real name feeling right on his tongue. "I need to tell you something." "Tell me," she said. "These past months working with you, living alongside you, I have come to care for you. Deeply. And I know your life has been turned upside down, and I know you are still healing, but I need you to know that when I look at you, I see someone extraordinary, someone brave and strong and beautiful." Shania's eyes widened. "You see me as beautiful, how could I not?" Vincent said. "You are the most beautiful woman I have ever known, inside and out. She leaned forward and her lips brushed his, tentative and questioning. Vincent froze for a heartbeat, then kissed her back, gentle and careful. She tasted like the wild honey they had found in the rocks and the coffee she had learned to love. When they pulled apart, both were breathing hard. "I care for you too," Shania said. "Since the beginning. Even when I could not speak, I felt it. The way you looked at me, the way you cared for me. Not as a possession, not as something to use, but as a person, as someone worthy of kindness. No one had looked at me that way since my family died." Vincent cupped her face in his hands. "You are worthy of so much more than kindness," he said. "You are worthy of love, of joy, of a life where you are not running and hiding." "Can I have that life here?" she asked. "With you?" "Yes," Vincent said without hesitation. "If that is what you want. I know it is not much. The ranch is struggling. I can barely afford to keep myself fed, let alone anyone else. But what I have is yours, all of it." Shania smiled, and it transformed her face, chasing away the shadows. "I do not need much," she said. "I only need you." They kissed again, longer this time, and Vincent felt something slot into place in his chest. Some piece of himself he had not known was missing. When they finally pulled apart, Shania stood and took his hand, leading him to the bedroom they had never shared, the space that had been hers alone. "Stay with me tonight," she said. "Hold me. Let me feel safe." Vincent did not trust himself to speak, so he simply nodded. They lay down together on top of the covers, the summer heat making blankets unnecessary. Shania curled against his side, her head on his chest, and he wrapped his arm around her, holding her close. Her breathing gradually steadied, and he felt her relax, the tension draining from her body. "Vincent," she murmured, half asleep. "Yes, thank you for saving my life." "You saved mine too," he said quietly. "I just did not know I needed saving." She fell asleep in his arms, and Vincent lay awake for a long time, listening to her breathe, feeling the weight and warmth of her against him, and thinking that maybe, just maybe, his luck was finally turning. The next morning they woke tangled together, and there was a moment of awkwardness before Shania smiled and kissed him, chasing away any uncertainty. They had crossed a line, but it was a line Vincent had no desire to uncross. Over breakfast, Shania spoke freely, making up for months of silence. She told him about her childhood, about learning to ride and hunt and track. She told him about the Apache way of life, the deep connection to the land, the importance of family and honor. She told him about the injustices her people had suffered, the broken treaties and the forced relocations, the violence and the lies. Vincent listened, angry on her behalf, frustrated by his own helplessness in the face of such wrongs. "I cannot change what happened," he said. "But I can promise you this. While you are with me, you will be treated with respect. You will be valued. And if anyone tries to hurt you again, they will have to go through me first." Shania reached across the table and took his hand. "I believe you," she said simply. Life on the ranch took on a new rhythm. Now that Shania could speak, she shared her knowledge freely. She taught Vincent how to make poultices from desert plants that healed wounds faster than anything he had tried. She showed him tracking techniques that made finding lost cattle effortless. She introduced him to Apache methods of water conservation that would help them survive the drought. More importantly, they talked about everything and nothing, about their dreams and their fears, about the future they might build together, about the challenges they would face. Because there would be challenges. Vincent was well aware that not everyone in Lerdo would approve of his relationship with an Apache woman. Texas in 1878 was not a forgiving place, especially for those who crossed social boundaries. There were men who would see Shania as less than human, who would resent her presence, who might even try to hurt her. But Vincent had made his choice, and he would stand by it. The first test came in late July when he rode into Lerdo for supplies. He brought Shania with him, both because he did not want to leave her alone and because he refused to hide her away as if she were something shameful. They hitched the wagon outside the general store, and Vincent helped Shania down, very aware of the stares they were attracting. Lerdo was a small town, and gossip traveled faster than telegraph signals. By now, everyone probably knew that Vincent Garrett was living with an Apache woman. The general store owner, Mr. Patterson, was a gruff man in his 50s who had always been fair with Vincent. He looked up as they entered, his eyes widening slightly when he saw Shania, but his expression remained neutral. "Morning, Vincent," he said. "What can I get for you?" Vincent rattled off his list, and Mr. Patterson began gathering items. Shania wandered the store, examining the goods with quiet interest. She paused near a display of fabric, her fingers running over a bolt of blue calico. "That would look nice on you," Vincent said softly, coming to stand beside her. Shania shook her head. "Too expensive." "Let me worry about that," Vincent said. He turned to Mr. Patterson. "Add 3 yards of this blue fabric to my order." Mr. Patterson nodded, cutting the fabric without comment. But as he was tallying the cost, the door banged open and 3 men walked in. Vincent recognized them immediately, and his gut tightened. Jack Morrison and his brothers, Tom and Pete, were known troublemakers. They owned a larger ranch north of town, and they had a reputation for being cruel to both animals and people. Jack's eyes landed on Shania and narrowed. "Well, well," he drawled. "Looks like Vincent Garrett has himself a little Indian pet." Vincent stepped in front of Shania, his hand instinctively moving toward the gun at his hip. "Watch your mouth, Morrison." Jack laughed, a harsh sound. "Or what? You are going to defend her honor." "She is Apache, Garrett. She does not have any honor." "That is enough," Mr. Patterson said sharply. "I will not have that kind of talk in my store." But Jack was not finished. "I heard the army was looking for a group of Apache that fled a resettlement convoy, killed 2 soldiers in the process. I wonder if your little pet was part of that group." Vincent's blood ran cold. He knew Shania had been running from soldiers, but he had assumed it was because she had witnessed the massacre of her family. If she was being accused of killing soldiers, that changed everything. They would hang her. "She did not kill anyone," Vincent said, keeping his voice steady. "She was defending herself from men trying to capture her." "Is that what she told you?" Jack said, grinning nastily. "And you believe her? How sweet." Shania stepped around Vincent, facing Jack directly. "I did not kill soldiers," she said, her voice clear and strong. "But if I had, it would have been justice. For my father, for my mother, for my brother and sister who were murdered while they slept." Jack's grin faded. "You are admitting to being part of that group." "I am admitting to nothing," Shania said, "except that I survived, and I will continue to survive, no matter what men like you try to do to me." There was steel in her voice, and something in her bearing made Jack take a step back. Vincent felt a surge of pride and fear in equal measure. Shania was magnificent, but she was also painting a target on herself. "Come on," Vincent said, taking her arm. "We are leaving." Mr. Patterson quickly finished tallying their supplies, and Vincent paid, acutely aware of Jack's eyes on them. They loaded the wagon in tense silence and headed out of town, neither speaking until Lerdo was well behind them. "I am sorry," Shania said finally. "I should not have spoken." "Do not apologize," Vincent said. "You had every right to defend yourself, but we have a problem now. If Jack reports you to the army, they will come looking." Shania nodded slowly. "Then we prepare. I have been running for a long time, Vincent. I know how to disappear." "No," Vincent said firmly. "No more running. We face this together, but we need to be smart about it." When they got back to the ranch, Vincent spent the evening thinking through their options. He could try to find a lawyer, but that would cost money he did not have. He could go to the sheriff, but there was no guarantee the sheriff would help. Or he could do nothing and hope that Jack was all talk and no action. None of the options were good. That night, as they lay in bed, Shania curled against him, Vincent made a decision. "Marry me," he said into the darkness. Shania went very still. "What?" "Marry me," Vincent repeated, propping himself up on one elbow to look at her. "If you are my wife, it will be harder for them to take you. Not impossible, but harder. And it is what I want anyway. I love you, Shania. I want you to be my wife. I want to build a life with you. I want to wake up beside you every morning for the rest of my life." Shania's eyes shimmered with tears. "You love me." "I do," Vincent said. "I think I have loved you since the moment I saw you stumbling toward my ranch, bloody and defiant. You are the strongest, bravest person I have ever met. And I would be honored to call you my wife." Shania threw her arms around his neck, kissing him fiercely. When she pulled back, she was crying and laughing at the same time. "Yes," she said. "Yes, I will marry you. I love you too, so much. You gave me back my life, and now you are giving me a future. How could I not love you?" They made love for the first time that night, a joining that was both tender and passionate. Vincent was careful with her, mindful of her past traumas, but Shania was fearless, guiding his hands, showing him what she wanted. Afterward, they lay breathless and tangled together, and Vincent felt a completeness he had never experienced before. "When?" Shania asked, tracing patterns on his chest. "As soon as possible," Vincent said. "Tomorrow, if we can manage it." They rode into Laredo the next day and went directly to the small church on the edge of town. Reverend Hayes was a kind man who had presided over Vincent's parents' funerals. He looked surprised when Vincent explained what they wanted, but after a moment's hesitation, he agreed. "I will need witnesses," he said. "I will witness," Mr. Patterson said from the doorway. They turned to see the store owner standing there, hat in hand. "I saw you two leave yesterday, and I figured you might come here today. Thought you could use a friendly face." Vincent felt a rush of gratitude. "Thank you, sir. Call me Harold," Mr. Patterson said, "and you will need another witness." As if summoned, the schoolteacher, Miss Clara Thompson, appeared. She was a woman in her 40s, sharp-eyed and sharp-tongued but fair. "I will stand as witness," she said. "I have no patience for bigotry, and I think what you two are doing is brave." So they were married, Vincent and Shania, in a ceremony that took less than 10 minutes but changed everything. Vincent slipped his mother's wedding ring onto Shania's finger, and she stared at it as if it were a miracle. When Reverend Hayes pronounced them husband and wife, Vincent kissed her, and she kissed him back, and Harold and Clara clapped. They signed the marriage certificate, and Reverend Hayes handed it to Vincent. "Keep this safe," he said. "You may need it." Vincent understood. The marriage certificate was not just proof of their union. It was a shield, however flimsy, against those who would try to separate them. News of the marriage spread quickly, as Vincent had known it would. Some people in Laredo were scandalized. Others were supportive. Most were simply curious. Vincent did not care. He had what mattered most, Shania, his wife, working beside him on the ranch they were building together. For several weeks, life was peaceful. The summer rains finally came, breaking the drought and bringing the land back to life. The cattle thrived. Vincent and Shania worked from dawn to dusk, and in the evenings they would sit on the porch, watching the sunset, talking about their plans. Shania wanted to expand the vegetable garden. Vincent wanted to buy more breeding stock. They both wanted children someday, when the ranch was more secure. But the peace could not last. One afternoon in early September, a detachment of Army soldiers rode onto Vincent's property. There were 6 of them, led by a lieutenant with cold eyes and a harder expression. Vincent and Shania were working in the corral when they arrived, and Vincent immediately stepped in front of his wife, his hand on his gun. "Vincent Garrett?" the lieutenant asked, not bothering to dismount. "That is me," Vincent said. "What do you want?" "We are looking for an Apache woman who fled a resettlement convoy 3 months ago. We have reason to believe she is here." "You have been misinformed," Vincent said evenly. "My wife is Apache, but she was never part of any convoy. She came to me injured and I took her in. We are married now, legally and in the eyes of God." The lieutenant's lip curled. "Your wife? You married a savage." Vincent's hand tightened on his gun. "You will speak of my wife with respect, or you will leave my property. Now." One of the soldiers shifted nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the situation. But the lieutenant was unmoved. "I have orders to bring back any Apache found off the reservation. Married or not, she is coming with us." "No," Vincent said. "She is not." "Are you refusing to cooperate with the United States Army?" "I am protecting my wife," Vincent said. "There is a difference." The lieutenant finally dismounted, his hand on his own weapon. "Step aside, Garrett. I do not want to hurt you, but I will if I have to." Shania moved then, stepping around Vincent before he could stop her. "I will go," she said quietly. "I will not let you die for me." "No," Vincent said, grabbing her arm. "You are not going anywhere." "Vincent, please," Shania said, her eyes pleading. "I cannot watch you get hurt." "And I cannot watch them take you," Vincent said. "We are in this together. Remember." Before anyone could move, a new voice rang out. "Hold on just a minute." Vincent turned to see Reverend Hayes walking toward them, Mr. Patterson and several other townspeople behind him. Harold was carrying a shotgun and he did not look friendly. "Reverend," the lieutenant said, clearly surprised, "this is Army business." "And this is a member of my congregation," Reverend Hayes said. "Mrs. Garrett is a married woman, legally wed under Texas law. You have no right to take her." "She is Apache," the lieutenant said. "The law does not apply to her." "That is where you are wrong," Clara Thompson said, stepping forward with a book in her hands. "According to Texas law, any person legally married to a citizen has the same rights as that citizen. Mrs. Garrett is married to Mr. Garrett, a property-owning citizen of Texas. Therefore, she has the right to remain here." The lieutenant looked frustrated. "I have orders." "Then take your orders back to your commanding officer and tell him that if he wants Mrs. Garrett, he will have to come through the entire town of Laredo," Harold Patterson said. "Because we stand with the Garretts." Vincent looked around at the faces of his neighbors, some he knew well, others he barely recognized, and felt his throat tighten. He had not expected this. Had not even thought to ask for help. But here they were, standing between his wife and the army. The lieutenant looked at his men, who were clearly uncomfortable with the idea of fighting townspeople, and made a calculation. "This is not over," he said finally, mounting his horse. "I will be reporting this to my superiors." "You do that," Reverend Hayes said calmly. "And while you are at it, you might mention that the town of Laredo does not take kindly to injustice, no matter who is perpetrating it." The soldiers rode away, and Vincent released a breath he had not known he was holding. He turned to Shania and found her crying, her hands over her mouth. "Why?" she asked, looking at the townspeople. "Why would you help me?" "Because it is the right thing to do," Clara said simply. "And because we have seen the way you and Vincent are together. Anyone with eyes can see that you love each other. That matters more than heritage or politics." "Thank you," Vincent said, his voice rough. "All of you. I do not know how to repay this." "No repayment needed," Harold said. "Just keep being good people. That is enough." The townspeople dispersed, and Vincent and Shania were left alone in the yard. She turned to him and buried her face in his chest, her shoulders shaking. He held her tightly, his own emotions threatening to overwhelm him. "I thought I would lose you," Shania said. "I thought they would take me and I would never see you again." "That will never happen," Vincent said fiercely. "Do you hear me? I will not let anyone take you from me, not the army, not the government, not anyone." She looked up at him, her face tear-streaked but radiant. "I love you," she said. "I love you so much it hurts." "I love you too," Vincent said and kissed her, pouring everything he felt into that kiss, all his fear and relief and overwhelming gratitude. That night as they lay in bed, Shania said, "We should leave. Go somewhere they will not find us." "No," Vincent said. "This is our home. We are not running anymore. The town stood up for us today. That means something. It means we have a chance to build a real life here." Shania was quiet for a long time. "What if they come back? Then we will face them again," Vincent said, "together with our friends beside us." She nodded slowly, and he felt her relax against him. "Together," she echoed. "As promised, the army did come back, but not with soldiers." Instead, a captain arrived with a letter from a general, requesting a meeting with Mr. and Mrs. Garrett and the town council. The meeting was held in the church, and it was tense. The captain explained that the army had been under orders to relocate all Apache to reservations, but that those orders had been written without consideration for individual circumstances. "Mrs. Garrett," the captain said, addressing Shania directly for the first time. "Were you part of the group that fled the resettlement convoy?" Shania met his gaze steadily. "I was never part of a convoy. I was fleeing men who killed my family and then tried to capture me. I do not know what group you are referring to." The captain studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Very well. Given your marriage to a United States citizen and the support of this community, I am recommending that no further action be taken regarding your status. You will be allowed to remain here, provided you do not engage in any activities that threaten the peace." "She is a rancher's wife," Vincent said. "The only thing she threatens is the local rabbit population." A few people in the church chuckled and the tension broke slightly. The captain allowed himself a small smile. "Then we have no issue. Consider this matter closed." It was not a perfect resolution. Shania would always be watched, always be suspect in some people's eyes. But it was enough. It gave them the space to live their lives without constantly looking over their shoulders. Autumn came, painting the Texas landscape in golds and browns. The ranch continued to improve, and Vincent even managed to buy 3 more head of cattle. Shania's garden produced more vegetables than they could eat, and she began selling the surplus in town. People came to appreciate her knowledge of medicinal plants, and Clara Thompson started sending students to Shania to learn about native herbs. Slowly, Shania became part of the community. Not everyone accepted her, but enough people did that she no longer felt like an outsider. She made friends with Clara and a few other women in town. She taught Vincent's horse to do tricks that amazed the local children. She became known as someone who could find anything that was lost, from cattle to jewelry to wandering pets. And through it all, she and Vincent grew closer. Their love deepened from passion into something more profound, a partnership built on trust and respect and shared dreams. They worked side by side every day and fell into each other's arms every night. They argued sometimes, usually about whether Vincent was working too hard or whether Shania was taking unnecessary risks, but they always made up before sleep. In December, Shania realized she was pregnant. She had suspected for a few weeks, but had not been sure until the morning sickness started. She told Vincent one evening after supper, watching nervously for his reaction. Vincent's face went through several expressions in rapid succession: shock, joy, fear, then settled on wonder. "A baby," he said. "We are having a baby." "Yes," Shania said, laughing at his expression. "Is that all right?" All right. Vincent swept her into his arms, spinning her around. It is more than all right. It is perfect. You are perfect. I cannot believe this is real. He set her down gently, suddenly concerned. Are you well? Do you need anything? Should you be resting? I am fine, Shania said, amused by his worry. Women have babies all the time. I am strong. Our child will be strong too. Our child, Vincent repeated as if testing the words. Then he knelt and pressed his ear to her still flat belly. Hello in there, he said softly. This is your father. I just want you to know that you are already so loved. Your mother and I are going to take such good care of you. Shania's eyes filled with tears as she ran her fingers through Vincent's hair. This man who had taken her in when she was broken and bleeding, who had defended her against soldiers and bigots, who had given her back her voice and her hope, was going to be the father of her child. She could not imagine anything more right. The pregnancy progressed smoothly. Shania continued working on the ranch, though Vincent hovered anxiously and tried to take over the heavier tasks. She let him, amused by his protectiveness. As her belly grew, so did the excitement in Lerdo. Several women, including Clara, offered advice and help. Harold Patterson started setting aside supplies for the baby, refusing to let Vincent pay for them. Consider it a gift, he said gruffly. Every child deserves a good start. Shania was touched by the generosity. These people who had once been strangers had become family. She thought of her own family, her father and mother and siblings, and wished they could have met Vincent, could have seen the life she was building. But she also felt them with her, in the way she cared for the land, in the songs she sang to her unborn child, in the strength she drew on when things were difficult. Spring arrived again, a full year since Shania had stumbled onto Vincent's ranch. The wildflowers bloomed, covering the prairie in color. Shania was hugely pregnant now, uncomfortable and impatient for the baby to arrive. Vincent was beside himself with anticipation and anxiety. What if something goes wrong? He asked one night. What if I lose you? You will not lose me, Shania said firmly. I have survived too much to die now. I will bring this baby into the world and we will raise him or her together and we will be happy. I promise you. 2 weeks later, on a warm April morning, Shania's labor began. Clara and 2 other women came to help, and Vincent was banished to the barn, where he paced and prayed and tried not to imagine all the things that could go wrong. The labor was long and difficult, lasting well into the night. Vincent could hear Shania crying out, and it took every ounce of willpower not to burst into the house. But finally, as the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, he heard a new sound. A baby crying. Clara appeared in the doorway, smiling. You have a son, she said. A healthy, strong boy. And Shania is tired but well. Vincent ran into the house and straight to the bedroom. Shania was propped up in bed, sweaty and exhausted, cradling a tiny bundle wrapped in cloth. When she saw Vincent, her face lit up with a smile that took his breath away. Come meet your son, she said softly. Vincent approached carefully, as if any sudden movement might shatter the moment. He looked down at the baby and felt his heart crack open. The child was perfect, with a shock of dark hair and eyes that were trying to focus. His tiny fist waved in the air, and without thinking, Vincent offered his finger. The baby grabbed it with surprising strength. He is so small, Vincent whispered, awed. He will grow, Shania said, and he will be strong and brave like his father. Like his mother, Vincent corrected, leaning down to kiss her forehead. You are so brave today. I am so proud of you. Shania's eyes drifted closed, exhaustion overtaking her. We need to name him, she murmured. Vincent thought for a moment. What about Samuel? He said. Samuel Grey Garrett. Samuel because it means God has heard, and Grey for your father. Shania's eyes opened, filling with tears. Samuel Grey Garrett, she repeated. "It is perfect. My father would have been honored." Samuel Grey Garrett proved to be a healthy, happy baby. He had his mother's dark eyes and his father's stubborn chin. Vincent and Shania doted on him, taking turns walking him when he cried, marveling at every tiny change and development. The ranch flourished with the new addition. It was as if Samuel brought good luck with him. The cattle multiplied, the rains came regularly, and Vincent's reputation as a fair dealer spread, bringing new business. Shania continued to sell her herbs and vegetables, and between the two incomes, they finally had financial security. Samuel's first year passed in a blur of sleepless nights and precious moments. His first smile, his first laugh, his first tooth, his first word, which was "Mama" to Vincent's mock dismay. Shania was a natural mother, patient and loving, while Vincent discovered a capacity for tenderness he had not known he possessed. On Samuel's first birthday, they threw a party. Half of Laredo showed up, bringing gifts and food. Harold Patterson gave Samuel a carved wooden horse. Clara brought a set of children's books. Even Reverend Hayes came, blessing the child and the family. As Vincent watched his son playing with the other children, watched Shania laughing with the women of the town, he felt a profound sense of contentment. This was what happiness looked like. Not wealth or fame or power, but this. Family, friends, community, love. That night, after everyone had left and Samuel was asleep, Vincent and Shania sat on the porch as they had so many times before. The stars were bright overhead and the air was warm and sweet. "Do you ever think about that day?" Vincent asked. "The day you came here." "Every day," Shania said. "I think about how close I came to dying, how lucky I was to find you." "I was the lucky one," Vincent said. "You changed everything. You gave me purpose, gave me a reason to fight for the ranch. Gave me a family." Shania leaned her head on his shoulder. "We saved each other," she said. "That is the truth of it. You saved my life and I saved your soul." Vincent wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. "I love you," he said, "more than I can ever express." "I know," Shania said. "I feel it every day in everything you do, and I love you just as much." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars, and Vincent thought about the future. There would be more challenges, he knew. Life was never without struggle. But they would face those challenges together, as they had faced everything else. The years rolled on, bringing changes and growth. Samuel grew into a bright, energetic boy who loved the ranch and everything about it. He learned to ride before he could properly walk, sitting in front of his father on the saddle. He learned Apache from his mother, who told him stories of his grandfather and the proud heritage he carried. He learned reading and arithmetic from Clara, who declared him one of her best students. When Samuel was 4, Shania became pregnant again. This time Vincent was calmer, more confident. The birth was easier and they welcomed a daughter into the world. They named her Grace, for the grace that had brought them together and sustained them through hard times. Grace had her father's green eyes and her mother's fierce spirit. She was quieter than Samuel, but no less determined. Where Samuel loved the outdoors and the animals, Grace loved her mother's garden and the stories in books. Together, the two children filled the house with laughter and occasional tears, with boundless energy and endless questions. Vincent expanded the ranch, buying adjoining land when it became available. He hired a few ranch hands, men who respected Shania and treated her as the boss's wife deserved. The Garrett Ranch became known throughout the region for its quality cattle and fair dealing. Shania became a respected figure in Laredo. Her knowledge of medicine saved lives, and her quiet wisdom helped resolve disputes. She never forgot where she came from, and she used her position to help other Native Americans when she could, offering work and shelter to those who needed it, speaking up when she witnessed injustice. The town grew and changed. Some of the old prejudices faded as new generations came of age. Samuel and Grace grew up in a world where their mixed heritage was accepted, even celebrated. They were proud of both their Apache and their American roots, and they moved easily between both worlds. When Samuel was 12 and Grace was 8, Vincent and Shania decided to make a trip to the Apache lands in Arizona. They wanted their children to see where their mother had come from, to understand that part of their heritage more deeply. The journey was long and sometimes difficult, but when they finally arrived at the reservation where some of Shania's distant relatives lived, it was an emotional reunion. Shania's cousins and their families welcomed them with open arms, and for 2 weeks, the Garrett family immersed themselves in Apache culture. Samuel and Grace learned dances and songs, heard stories of their ancestors, and gained a deeper appreciation for their mother's strength and resilience. On the last night of their visit, Shania took Vincent to a hill overlooking the reservation. The sunset painted the sky in brilliant oranges and reds, and in the distance, they could see the mountains where Shania had grown up. "Thank you," she said softly, "for bringing me here, for giving our children this gift. Thank you for trusting me with your past," Vincent said, "and for building a future with me." Shania turned to him, and even after all these years, the love in her eyes still made his breath catch. "I would choose you again," she said. "In every life, in every world, I would always choose you." They kissed as the sun set, and in that moment, Vincent felt the circle of their life together close in the most satisfying way. They had started with violence and fear, but they had built something beautiful from those broken pieces. They had created a family, a legacy, a love that would endure. They returned to the ranch in Texas, to the life they had built together. The years continued to pass, marked by small joys and occasional sorrows. Samuel grew into a fine young man, taking over more and more of the ranch work. Grace became a teacher, following in Clara's footsteps. Both children eventually married and had children of their own, giving Vincent and Shania grandchildren to spoil and adore. Through it all, Vincent and Shania remained devoted to each other. They still worked side by side on the ranch, though as they aged, the work became less demanding and they hired more help. They still sat on the porch in the evenings, watching the sunset, talking about everything and nothing. They still reached for each other in the night, finding comfort and passion in familiar touches. When Vincent was in his 50s, he fell ill with pneumonia. For 2 weeks, Shania barely left his side, nursing him with all the skill and determination she possessed. She made him drink her herbal teas, kept him warm, and refused to let him give up. "You are not leaving me," she said fiercely one night when his fever was at its worst. "Do you hear me, Vincent Garrett? We have too much life left to live. You are not leaving me." And somehow, through the fever and the delirium, Vincent heard her. He fought his way back, driven by her voice and her presence. When he finally recovered, weak but alive, the first thing he said was, "I heard you. I could not leave you. I will never leave you." Shania cried then, tears of relief and joy, and Vincent held her, marveling once again at the strength of this woman who had come into his life broken and bleeding and had become his everything. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies moving more slowly. But their love never diminished. If anything, it deepened, becoming something richer and more profound with each passing year. They celebrated 50 years of marriage with a party that brought together 3 generations of family and friends. Samuel gave a speech, talking about his parents' love and the example they had set. "My father once told me that he saved my mother's life," Samuel said. "But my mother told me that she saved his soul. The truth is, they saved each other. And in doing so, they showed all of us what real love looks like. It is not easy or simple. It is work and sacrifice and choosing each other every single day. But it is also joy and laughter and partnership. It is building something together that is stronger than what either person could build alone. Vincent and Shania sat hand in hand as their son spoke, and when he finished, everyone raised their glasses in a toast. To love, to family, to the future. On a warm spring evening, when Vincent was 74 and Shania was 71, they sat on their porch as they had done thousands of times before. The ranch stretched out before them, prosperous and thriving. In the distance, they could see their grandchildren playing, their laughter carrying on the breeze. "We did well," Vincent said softly. "Did we not?" "We did," Shania agreed. "Better than I ever dreamed possible back when I was running and broken." "Do you ever regret it?" Vincent asked. "Staying with me. Choosing this life," Shania turned to him, and her eyes, though aged, were still as dark and beautiful as the day he had first looked into them. "Not for a single moment," she said. "You gave me everything. A home, a family, a purpose. You gave me love." "How could I ever regret that?" Vincent raised her hand to his lips, kissing her weathered fingers. "I love you," he said. "I have loved you since the beginning, and I will love you until the end." "And beyond," Shania said. "Love like ours does not end with death. It continues. In our children, in our grandchildren, in the legacy we leave behind." They sat together as the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors. And as the stars began to appear, one by one, Vincent and Shania Garrett held each other close, grateful for every moment of the extraordinary life they had built together. Years later, long after they had both passed, their great-grandchildren would tell stories about Vincent and Shania. About the rancher who took in a silent Apache woman and loved her despite the odds. About the woman who found her voice and changed everything. About a love that transcended prejudice and hardship, that built a family and a legacy that would endure for generations. But in that moment, sitting on their porch with the stars overhead and their hands entwined, Vincent and Shania were not thinking about legacy or history. They were simply being together, two souls who had found each other against all odds and had chosen, every single day, to build a life of love. And that, in the end, was everything. The final years of their lives passed peacefully. Vincent died first in his sleep, with Shania beside him. He was 79 years old and had lived a full, rich life. Shania held his hand as he took his last breath, and though her heart broke, she also felt a sense of peace. They had been given so much time together, more than she had ever thought possible on that desperate day when she had stumbled onto his ranch. Shania lived another 3 years, surrounded by children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren who all carried pieces of her and Vincent in them. She told them stories of the old days, of their grandfather's kindness and courage, of the life they had built together. She taught them Apache songs and showed them how to find healing plants in the desert. She made sure they understood both sides of their heritage and were proud of where they came from. On the anniversary of Vincent's death, Shania asked Samuel to take her to the hill behind the ranch house, the spot where she and Vincent had often sat together. Samuel helped her up the slope, supporting her as her aged legs struggled with the climb. At the top, he spread a blanket and Shania sat, looking out over the land that had been her home for more than 50 years. "I will come back for you in an hour, Mother," Samuel said gently, but Shania shook her head. "Stay with me for a moment," she said. "There is something I want to tell you." Samuel sat beside her and Shania took his hand. "I want you to know how proud I am of you," she said, "and of Grace, and of all my grandchildren. You have all made beautiful lives. You have all chosen kindness and love even when it would have been easier to choose hate. That is your father's legacy and mine. That is what we leave behind. "We learned it from watching you," Samuel said, his voice thick with emotion. Shania smiled. "Then our work is done. The love your father and I shared, it lives on in all of you, and it will live on long after I am gone. That is what matters." They sat together in silence for a while, mother and son, watching the sun move across the sky. And when Samuel finally helped her back down the hill, Shania looked at the ranch one last time, seeing it not as it was, but as it had been. She saw Vincent standing by the corral, young and strong and smiling. She saw herself, silent and broken, taking her first tentative steps toward healing. She saw their children playing in the yard, heard their laughter echoing across the years. Shania passed away peacefully in her sleep 3 days later. The doctor said her heart simply stopped, worn out from a long life fully lived. But those who knew her best believed something different. They believed she had held on as long as she needed to, making sure her family was settled and secure, and then she had let go, ready to rejoin the man who had been her heart for more than 50 years. They buried her next to Vincent on that same hill, beneath a tree they had planted together 40 years earlier. The funeral was attended by hundreds of people, Apache and white, old friends and new generations. They came to pay respects to a woman who had survived the impossible, who had built bridges between cultures, who had loved deeply and lived fully. Samuel spoke at the funeral, his voice carrying across the gathered crowd. "My mother used to say that she and my father saved each other. And that is true. But they also saved all of us. They showed us that love is stronger than hate, that family is defined not by blood but by choice, that the past does not have to determine the future. They gave us a legacy of hope, and it is our responsibility to carry it forward." As the sun set on the day of Shania's funeral, her family gathered at the ranch house. They shared stories and memories, laughed and cried, and celebrated the remarkable life she had lived. Grace brought out her mother's collection of herbs, carefully preserved, and began teaching her own grandchildren the uses of each one. Samuel walked the land with his sons and grandsons, pointing out the places where his parents had worked and dreamed and built their life together. The Garrett Ranch continued to thrive, generation after generation. The story of Vincent and Shania became family legend, told and retold, always ending the same way. With two people who should never have met, who overcame impossible odds, who built a love that changed not just their lives but the lives of everyone they touched. And on quiet spring evenings, when the sunset painted the Texas sky in brilliant colors, those who worked the land sometimes swore they could see two figures on the hill, sitting close together, watching over the legacy they had created. Hand in hand, heart to heart, together even in death as they had been in life. The love story of Vincent and Shania Garrett became more than just a story. It became a testament to the power of compassion, the strength of love, and the possibility of redemption. It proved that even in the hardest times, in the most unforgiving places, two people could find each other and build something beautiful. And though decades turned to centuries, though the ranch changed hands and the world moved on, the memory of their love endured. Because some stories are too powerful to be forgotten, some loves are too profound to fade, and some legacies are meant to last forever. Vincent Garrett had been a poor rancher who took in a silent Apache woman. Months later, she finally spoke and changed everything. She changed his life, his heart, his future. And together they changed the world around them, one act of love at a time. That was their story. A story of survival and healing, of courage and hope, of a love that conquered all obstacles and created a legacy that would never die. It was a story worth telling, worth remembering, worth celebrating. And it was a story that ended exactly as it should have, with two souls who had found each other, loved each other, and lived happily ever after.